Do you want to blast gigantic holes through enemy ranks like a hot knife through butter? Do you want the firepower of an armored vehicle in your hands? Do you want to do it practically all game long? If so, I've got just the build for you to turn heretics of all sorts into a fine red mist. So let's see how it all comes together. Following my recent review of the buffs to the Ogryn's Point Blank Barrage, this is the more formalized and tested build compared to the experimental one I shared there. But, as in that build, the centerpiece of this one is going to be the Kickback, what is essentially a hand-carried flak cannon that deals a monstrous amount of damage to enemies unfortunate enough to be standing too close. Since I've never done a review of the Kickback before, I'll do a mini one here to bring you up to speed with the ups and downs of the weapon. As you can see from the table above, the Kickback hits extremely hard, dealing damage that starts from 1.6k upwards depending on the armor type other than Carapace. While it does boast a very high raw damage, its finesse multipliers aren't that impressive, which I would expect for something that is designed for straight brute force. Both weak spot and critical hits have a 1.23 multiplier, which is below average even amongst weapons that have low multipliers. Usually, you'd expect the lows to be around 1.3. Its critical weak spot multiplier is also low, sitting at a 1.38 times, when most weapons tend to have about 2.0 or thereabouts. Notable damage numbers include damage dealt to Infested and Maniac. The Kickback is capable of shredding through these armor classes, making relatively short work of Drake Ragers and hordes of Poxwalkers. Apart from Carapace, Flak Armor is the most resilient against the Kickback, and this will inform how we are going to build our Kickback to compensate against this enemy class. For additional stats, the Kickback has a fall-off range of between 14 meters up until 28 meters. However, it is important to note that on top of fall-off damage, the number of pellets you land on a target will also influence the damage you see. So you could be within 10 meters, but because you did not land all the pellets in your shot, you will deal less damage than the damage tables are showing you, so keep that in mind. It also has an incredible stagger power behind its shots, capable of knocking everything onto the ground with the exception of monsters. This means you can disrupt crushers out of their overheads, stagger open bulwarks, and blast gunners and reapers out of their firing line. Between that and its abundance of ammo and quick reloads, the Kickback can be in continuous action, suppressing, staggering, and blasting away at heretical threats very often. The Kickback also has a relatively decent minimum pellet count built into the weapon. What this means is that if you try to snipe a target that is well out of your effective range, say 60 meters or so, the Kickback will always land a minimum number of pellets when shot at them. This means you can still deal some damage, usually around maybe 10 to 15% of your usual. While this isn't going to be the most effective use of your ammo, it does mean you can take out key targets like snipers and bombers despite them being very far away. So with that, let's take a look at the build we will be using. For perks, because the Kickback will be blasting everything in sight, we'll want to stick on Flak and Maniac damage. This allows us to deal critical damage to elites, sometimes outright one-shotting them, and importantly, chunking incoming mutants with a well-placed shot to the face. For blessings, we will be taking Blaze Away to power up our attacks with continuous shots. The strength multiplier from this blessing is what really allows us to mow down hordes of enemies and delete elites like they were nothing. I have also chosen to take Surgical as my second blessing. Having messed around with the blessing some more and reading a comment here and there from the last video, there are in fact two ways of looking at this blessing in this build. On one hand, you could see it as a conflicting blessing with Blaze Away, since one wants you to fire as fast as possible, while the other wants you to take more measured shots to build up the critical chance. On the other hand, you can look at it as having options to change up the type of shots during moment-to-moment gameplay. The option to fully send as fast as possible will always be there, but now I have the option of building up a guaranteed critical shot for some extra damage. There's even a nice balance where you can get up to 3 stacks of Surgical while bracing and still maintain Blaze Away stacks. This gives you a pretty substantial damage boost that ramps up slower but maximizes your output. All in all, I find having this combination more fun to use because it opens up more capabilities for the weapon. Thank you for the suggestions in the last video. Now, for our melee weapon. Because our Kickback is going to be the main feature of the build, we'll need a melee weapon that does two things. Number one, can deal with crushers and hold back groups of enemies decently well. And number two, does not require much talent investment in order to be good. Since this build is going to be channeling most of the talent points into making the Kickback shine, we won't have many points to place into melee focus nodes. So, given these conditions, the weapon that I settled upon was the Kasola's Pickaxe. This weapon has decent anti-armor attacks, is decently fast to swing, and has a lot of strong blessings that allows it to hold its own. For perks, I've chosen Carapace and Elite Damage to focus solely on bringing down Crushers. For blessings, I've taken Hit Taker for the consistent strength boost from attacking, as well as Thunderous to break open the Carapace armor of Crushers. Having Thunderous also allows me to shoot Crushers in the face with a Kickback, dealing a chunk of damage and knocking them down on the floor. This is not meant to be effective, but it's meant to assert dominance. As for Curios, I like running with a 1 toughness 2 health setup. This gives the Ogryn a decent toughness pool, but a very comfortable health pool to take more punishment. As for perks, I'm running 3 combat regen, 3 stamina regen, 2 revive speed, and a gunner resistance. With our weapon loadout completed, let's take a look at the talents now. This build is going to differ from the one you might have seen from the Point Blank Barrage video a little. Already, the melee weapon choice has been swapped out to something that I find more fitting with the playstyle of the build. Anyway, the notable talents that form the core of this build are Steady Grip for the powerful toughness regeneration while bracing. This synergizes very well with Surgical, which wants you to brace while building up your critical chance, giving you a little bit of tanking power to place your shots once it's ready. Frag Bomb is your emergency save your bacon button, since it pretty much deletes everything around you if you find yourself surrounded. I also really like Can't Hit Me Again because it's a free reactive ranged damage resistance node that provides you with substantial survivability without having to do anything other than get shot. On the lower difficulties, this combined with Steady Grip can make you pretty resilient against chip damage from shooters. Keep Shooting as well as Pacemaker are a must for me because of how much of a reload boost it provides the Kickback. Since we only have a single shot, our DPS is increased by improving our reload speed, which both of these talents do. Our combat ability of choice will of course be Point Blank Barrage, and we will be taking the Light 'em Up node for the burn damage that allows us to be a menace to enemies far away since burn damage has no fall off. As mentioned in the previous video, this also allows you to burn bulwarks through their shields, dealing damage to them even while they are covered. When combined with the minimum pellet count characteristic of the Kickback, you can actually take down ranged enemies quite effectively, even at distances way outside your effective range. I'm picking up Concentrate because I really like the tighter spread while fighting in my effective range. This node pairs well with Surgical since both Blessing and Talent encourage bracing for a buff, allowing you to land a concentrated barrage of pellets on a group of enemies from further away. As we move down the left, we'll want to take No Hurting Friends. This is a really good damage booster node because it provides strength instead of damage, which is multiplied separately. This then gives you a surprisingly good damage buff that is active pretty much most of the time, not to mention the extra 15% toughness damage resistance to boot. Lastly, our keystone will be Burst Limiter Overdrive. As a side note, I find it ironic that Ogryns have some of the longest named talent nodes. Anyway, we'll be going with this keystone for access to Lucky Bullet, which will provide us with a bit of additional firepower on top of having the chance to not consume any ammo, which can potentially increase our DPS. The back-off supporting keystone node was an experimental pick that I toyed around with, and I found that the higher up in difficulty I went, the more often I had to engage in melee, which means back-off was playing a bigger role in helping me maintain my ammo economy. This was very helpful in high havocs where ammo pickups became scarce and provided reduced ammo. This build is rather straightforward to use. Blast anything and everything that isn't a crusher with your Kickback. Bunched up enemies are especially prime targets for blasting. However, there are some nuances to the build that can elevate your performance if you remember them. The best thing you can learn to do with this setup is balancing Surgical with Blaze Away. Because Blaze Away doesn't immediately disappear while you are bracing, you can actually charge up to 3 stacks of Surgical for an added 30% critical chance before you lose Blaze Away. This allows you to maximize your damage output when you don't have Point Blank Barrage ready yet. When you do have Point Blank Barrage active, I find it best to just spam fire as fast as you can to get as much ammo refunded as possible at the end of the duration. Trying to optimize your damage by incorporating the brace will only allow you to fire around 6 or 7 shots over Point Blank Barrage's duration. Plus, firing as fast as you can allows you to place more stacks of burn onto enemies, which will probably help your DPS more so than charging up for crits. The other thing you can do is to balance melee engagements with ranged ones. It can be tempting to always blast at every small group of enemies with the Kickback because it's easy, but I find my ammo economy improves a lot more when I purposely try to farm up some stacks of back off, so my next shot has a really good chance of triggering Lucky Bullet. If you balance your engagements well, this build will almost feel like it's playing with the veteran's Weapon Specialist keystone built in, since you practically have a guaranteed free shot to spend every 10 melee kills or so, even less if you are lucky. The Kickback's incredible stagger power is also something you should make use of. Its ability to knock down enemies from great distances means you can disrupt oppressive gunfire from gunner firing lines from far away, allowing you to relieve some pressure on the team. That is all for this video. I've been thoroughly enjoying exploring the Kickback with its newly buffed Point Blank Barrage. I hope you give this build a try. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Varlets.
Bomber!